Dale Earnhardt Jr. was, is, and forever shall be not only one of the most popular race car drivers of all time, but one of the most famous American sports figures of all time. Ask someone who isn't a NASCAR fan to name a driver, and odds are they're going to name one of three drivers: Dale Earnhardt Sr., Jeff Gordon, and of course, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Sure, some may list off Jimmie Johnson or Tony Stewart, and if they're older, maybe they'll even list off Richard Petty, Darrell Waltrip, or even Rusty Wallace. But all of these drivers have a few things in common that Dale Jr. just doesn't. They all have at least one Cup championship. They all have 49 wins or more. And they're all in the top 15 in the NASCAR Cup Series win list, and they don't look to be displaced from that list anytime soon. Dale Jr. is the outlier here. Yet, he's still immensely popular. Now, it's important to understand why this is. Before I go any deeper, I just want to give you context, though. I grew up in a family that pulled for the Earnhardts since the Intimidator was a rookie. In 2005, when I got into the sport, I pulled for Junior, and I did so until his retirement in 2017. So, I'm going to try and stay as objective as possible with all this, but you know what? I could be a bit biased on some of them. So if I am, feel free to call me out. But circling back to asking, why is Junior so popular? Obviously, his famous father had a bit to do with that. But many question why the fame and the results don't match up. And what are these numbers that don't match up? 26 wins, 149 top 5s, and 260 top 10s. And he had a highest career points finish of 3rd all the way back in 2003. To say the least, he was pretty excellent. Hall of Fame worthy career to be sure. But it is definitely the lowest of the drivers who are known in the general pop culture. Earnhardt's popularity is instead based more off of his personality and connection with the fans. This is important to note, because many who argue for Dale Jr. tend to be coming from this emotional point. That being said, Earnhardt's detractors also tend to knock him off for his popularity and come from an emotional point, claiming it's all because he had a famous dad and he was just handed everything. Something that just isn't true. I think it also highlights the disconnect between how good he was and how good people think he was or wasn't. As stated before, Junior had some pretty great numbers in his career. Also, as an Xfinity driver, he was one of the best of all time. Let's look at his Xfinity career first. As a full-time Xfinity driver, Earnhardt drove for his father's team of DEI, which stands for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. These years would be 1998 and 1999. It would consist of 13 wins and 2 consecutive championships. From that point on until today, he scored 11 more wins, totaling 24 and ranking him 10th all-time. In this time, Junior would compete against and beat friend and future Cup champion Matt Kenseth. With that, he was moved up to race for DEI's new team, the Budweiser 8 car. And during the DEI era, Junior would end up getting 17 wins in 8 seasons, and he would finish as high as 3rd in points in 2003. In this time, the driver of the Great 8 was mentioned in the same tier as drivers like Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson, and Tony Stewart. He was that good at that time. From the fall of 2001 to the spring of 2003, he also won 4 straight races at Talladega. He's the only driver to ever do so. And in 2004, he won his first Daytona 500. But restrictor plate races weren't the only ones where he found success. He won at short tracks, intermediates, and many in between. On top of his 3rd place finish in the 2003 points, Dale Jr. also competed for 2 Cup championships, one in 2004, the other in 2006. He finished 5th in points on both occasions. 2004 being the peak of his career with 6 victories, but with DEI's fall-off heading into the second half of the decade, it was clear that Earnhardt needed to move on to keep his competitive career thriving. And he would move to Hendrick Motorsports, the best team in NASCAR at the time. The thing is, this move started out looking like an absolute failure. From 2008 to 2011, he scored only 1 win, and he had no more than 16 top 10s in a season. He finished below 20th in points twice, in 2009 and 2010. By the time that 2012 rolled around, there were real questions to ask if the 88 would ever make it back to victory lane again. And to be honest, they were actually asked with good reason. But 2012 would be the year, and he would win at Michigan. Though once again, it would take over a year to get another win. 2014 and 2015 saw him win 7 times, the last of which being a rain-shortened triumph at Phoenix, the final win of his Cup career. In 10 years at HMS, Jr. won 9 times. These wins took place at a good difference of tracks, as his DEI wins did. His top points finish in this span was 5th in 2013, but that season was winless, unlike his 2014 season that saw him win 4 times, the most wins he ever got with Hendrick. Overall, whether it be at DEI or Hendrick, Dale Jr. was an upper-tier driver based on his stats. But while stats don't lie, they also don't tell every detail of the story. They don't tell how a driver ended up getting to a said stat point, how a 4th place finish is one of the most triumphant moments of a career, or how a victory came even though, by all accounts, the winner broke a rule but still got the win. In Earnhardt's career, there are many factors that can be looked at as to why or why not he was good or not. Equipment, luck, and whether or not he could come in clutch. Starting off with equipment, the early half of his career was at DEI, and Jr. finished 3 times in the top 5 in points in those seasons. And he had a streak of 3 seasons from 2002 to 2004 where he led over 1,000 laps per season. He was by far the best driver in DEI's history in Cup, as he was the only driver to finish in the top 10 in points in this equipment. 4 times, I might add. The next highest driver was future NASCAR Cup champion Martin Truex Jr., who finished 11th in points in 2007. Coincidentally, the final season Earnhardt raced for DEI. But in Jr.'s final 2 seasons with the team in 2006 and 07, he had 8 engine-related DNFs, 6 of which coming in 2007. Compare that to the 8 that he had in total at Hendrick Motorsports in his final 10 seasons, and it's apparent that his late struggles at DEI were at least more on the team. Speaking of Hendrick, this is where the equipment argument takes a really different and odd turn. Instead of being the top dog, Jr. now trailed at least one of his teammates every year at HMS. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson were consistently better, with JJ actually winning 5 of his 7 championships with Earnhardt as his teammate. Jr. did have a late career resurgence, though, that saw him drive as consistently good as his teammates, but never better. This could be me just being a nostalgic and biased member of Junior Nation, but I personally think that Dale Jr. had some really cruddy luck in his career. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the Kentucky race in 2013, where he got the pole, was leading, then hit a tire carcass while leading with a fast car, and completely screwed that car. I mean, the worst of his luck is concussions. He missed 20 races in his career because of them. 18 in 2016 and 2 in 2012. I always wonder what the man could have accomplished had he not had this horrible luck. Now, these 2 factors can be attributed to others or just not the driver in general, but the last one is all on the driver. The ability or lack of ability to come through in the clutch. For this, I have 5 examples for Earnhardt, 2 positive and 3 negative. Let's start off with the positives. We have the 2001 Pepsi 400 at Daytona. Only 4.5 months after the death of his father at the same track, Jr. returned with the weight of the sport on his shoulders. Not only did he win, but he did so in convincing fashion. Now, fast forward to 2015 and you have a fall race at Dover. Earnhardt is just outside the top 12 in points, which would be what he would need to advance into the next round of the chase. On the final restart, he passes 2 cars on the outside, which is really difficult to do on this race, en route to the round of 12 berth that he had. But while he came through there, these moments are outweighed by some of his folding moments under pressure, starting with the 2004 chase. Jr. competed against greats like Gordon, Johnson, Busch, and Martin for the championship. And if it wasn't for his self-inflicted blunders, he very well may have beat them for the championship. Firstly, there's his lack of situational awareness at Talladega.
What does it mean to win here, not only once, but to win here 5 times? Well, it don't mean shit right now. Daddy's done won here 10 times.
And then there's a move that very well may be the biggest regret of his career at Atlanta that year.
He's trying to drive the car right now faster and harder than the tire's a little light.
Championship contender in trouble, crashing on the back straightaway.
No, believe this.
Looked like he had contact with car levers.
But the 126 points lost in these two incidents still wouldn't make up the season-ending 138-point gap, but it would make it very close. What many forget, though, is his borderline meltdown embarrassment at Martinsville that fall that cost him at least 20 more points. In my opinion, had it not been for his own mistakes, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be the 2004 Nextel Cup Series champion. Now, when I say that Dale Earnhardt Jr. competed for 2 titles with DEI, they immediately think of 2004 and 2003. But 03 belonged to Kenseth. There was no contest. Instead, I'm looking to his very underrated 2006 campaign. Most know this season for him being taken out by Brian Vickers and spinning with Jimmy Johnson at Talladega. I'm not even going to be looking at that. That has nothing to do with anything he did. Instead, once again, we see Martinsville. In the closing laps of the race, Jr. was charging to the front. He would dive under Casey Kane for 6th and end up spinning, finishing 22nd instead of an almost assured top 5 run. Then, in the finale, while running top 5, he hit the wall late, fading back to around 19th. Had it not been for these 2 mistakes, Jr. would have had prime positioning to take the 2006 title away from Jimmy Johnson. The final example, though, takes place at Talladega in 2015. Most remember this race for the bad finish, but many forget that Dale Jr. and Joey Logano could have been swapped for positioning had Jr. not made another mess up. Heading into the pits in the final stops under green, he flat spotted the tires, forcing his team to put on replacements. This dropped him from the lead to outside of the top 10, and while he charged back to second, it all but sealed his chances at taking the 2015 crown. Who knows what would have happened had he advanced in that round. So to conclude, I think that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is an excellent driver. He isn't the best driver ever, but he still currently ranks 31st on the all-time Cup wins list, and it's clear that he is one of the best 50 NASCAR drivers to ever strap into a race car. So now, you have my opinion on it. I want to hear yours. How good do you think Dale Earnhardt Jr. is? Why do you say this? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content, and until next time, have a good one.